it's a great pleasure to welcome Mr. Jorgo Chatzimarkakis, who joins us, I assume, from Brussels. He's the Secretary General of the Hydrogen Europe, which, if I may say, is the European Hydrogen Association. You, as a former member of the European Parliament, of course, know Europe very well, the landscape in Europe, also beyond hydrogen. And I know that your association is very active, also related to the most recent announcements made by the European Commission. And now I have the pleasure to give you the floor and listening to you about the role of hydrogen in Europe. Please.
Thank you very much. You see me here sitting in front of a banner of the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance. So basically, Hydrogen Europe is active in this alliance. I'm not sure whether you want to show the presentation that I sent to you. If not, we need to share.
Usually the speakers who show it, but in case you prefer, or as a backup, we have it as well.
Then I can, if you want me to show it, can you share the screen, please, with me?
You just press on the button, share screen. You can do that, and then choose the right window, and then it should work.
Yeah, done. So,
excellent.
Yeah, thanks very much for the invitation. Let me run through the slides and then see whether you have questions. And it's an honor to speak, of course, to you. Now I want to go to the next, slide. Here. This is Hydrogen Europe. Hydrogen Europe is an association with now more than 200 members. We have more than 180 industrial members. We have national associations and research institutions. And it's companies especially active in the field or in one part of the value chain of hydrogen production, hydrogen utilization. We think and we try to act in the 7th generation principle. It's something that the Iroquois people, indigenous people in today's US territory came up with some centuries ago. They said in our every deliberation, we must consider the impact of our decisions on the next 7 generations. And I'm saying this because we have seen as Hydrogen Europe and as the hydrogen community a quite important historical day on 8th of July, where 3 different things were initiated. One was that a European hydrogen strategy was issued. That was hard work, but next to some member states of the European Union, like Germany, Austria, also the Netherlands, now also the EU has that. We are aware that France will come up with a hydrogen strategy very soon. And that's very, very important to have this as a part of the policy decision-making as a basis of this. We also have another issue that was launched the very same day, the so-called energy system integration. This is about integrating the electricity, the power system more with the gas system. And of course, that goes via hydrogen, which some call it the gaseous form of electricity. So hydrogen is the missing link to liaise the 2 grids, the power grid and the gas grid, whereby more and more the gas grid will be refurbished and retrofitted into a hydrogen backbone. And in order to steer all these processes, the EU Clean Hydrogen Alliance was launched. I'll come back to it later on. Now, why is there such a big interest in hydrogen right now? Why can we not consider it anymore as a hype, but basically as we have overcome the hype cycle? We are somehow reaching the plateau of productivity. Let me share with you this slide here that shows the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on the energy market. This is a slide that has been produced by the IEA, showing that nearly all the energy consumption, has been a big drop of energy consumption in nearly all the fields of energy production, coal, gas, oil, and also nuclear were affected, not the renewables. The renewable production even went up slightly, but it went up. And we can see, and we also can understand this COVID-19 somehow as a game changer. And this, of course, is a unique opportunity to step away from fossil energy and to use the opportunities to develop especially renewably produced hydrogen. And we do this in Europe, especially by using solar and wind resources. You see on the left-hand side a map showing that in the north, the blue sphere is rather wind-oriented, whereas the yellow sphere in the south and also neighboring regions of Europe is quite sun-oriented. Then you see the ambition of the Europeans to create a hydrogen backbone that would lead or help to disseminate, to transport this renewably produced hydrogen from Northern Africa or from the North Sea to the centers of Europe where hydrogen would find the customers, mainly industrial clusters, but later on also other things. And on the right-hand side, you see an important factor, salt caverns, to store renewably produced hydrogen in order to be used, especially in times when there is not enough renewable energy. There's a German word that has been used in the Brussels bubble very often, which is called the Dunkelflaute, so the 2 months, especially February, March, where there's not enough supply of renewable energy, where you then use the stored renewable energy via hydrogen. Yeah, what we see and understand is developing more and more is the so-called hydrogenuables. So it's a direct production of hydrogen at the source. Here you see a platform, a former oil platform, offshore, of course, that now is refurbished or retrofitted to become an electrolyzer, very close to the offshore fields. Similar things are thinkable, of course, in the solar world, but as you are the wind people and more interested in that, this is a vision that will become reality quite soon. We have major investments being announced, especially by Shell and GasUnie and the port of Eemshaven, so 3 Dutch players who will realize exactly that with an invest of 15 billion in the next 10 years. Here you see a similar idea for Northern Africa. This is a picture taken from Morocco, which is quite active in that field. Now, hydrogen can be regarded as the missing link, as it is a multi-talent. It's an energy vector, not only an energy carrier, it's a vector because you can store it other than electricity. It's a fuel, and it's a chemical feedstock. And especially the last identity leads to immediate usage of hydrogen, of renewably produced hydrogen in industrial sectors like the steel industry, chemical industry, petrochemical industry, and also fertilizers. Refineries and fertilizers are globally the biggest consumers of hydrogen today. What did we do, and why could we achieve getting a hydrogen strategy and also having this Clean Hydrogen Alliance? We proposed in January this year a plan together with Professor Ad van Wijk from the Netherlands, ramping up the capacity of electrolyzers to 2 times 40 gigawatt. 1 time 40 gigawatt in Europe, and the 2nd time 40 gigawatt in Northern Africa and Ukraine, so neighboring regions who have a lot of wind, but also a lot of solar power to be used. We additionally came up with a plan how to use this hydrogen. We call this the Hydrogen 2030 Blueprint, where, because we should overcome the chicken and egg issue to talk only about production of hydrogen, but not of the usage. In this blueprint here that you can access online on our website, Hydrogen Europe EU, we did that maths, we did that calculation, and that triggered a plan, a concrete plan of the European Commission that they rolled out in their strategy, which is they want, together with us, with the sector, of course, to produce 1 million ton of renewable hydrogen until 2024. That's the end of the mandate of this commission. So it's ambitious, it's absolutely doable, but it's ambitious, and it shows that they put pressure on themselves, because we need political decisions in order to facilitate this rollout. There are a lot of hurdles. This should then be ramped up to 10 million tons of green hydrogen until 2030, which corresponds to 100 million tons of CO2 abatement. And this is already 5% of the overall EU 2030 targets when it comes to the Paris Agreement. So we tried to propose to the Commission this coherent approach. On one hand, the vision ramping up 2 times 40 gigawatt, then the blueprint combined with the cost, because the hydrogen blueprint for the next 10 years foresees investments of 430 billion euro, whereas 1/3 is public, 2/3 would be private. And we underpinned that with the commitment of most of our members, nearly all of our members. So in the end, it was 110 CEOs, and we are talking CEOs who signed that commitment from BP, from Airbus, BP to Vattenfall. But we also described which political measures we need to implement in order to make this happen. So all in all, we have calculated that 170,000 jobs could be created just in the electrolyzer production. But if you have a closer look to it, you will see that in both plans, the plan for the 40 gigawatt in the EU and the 40 gigawatt outside the EU, it's mainly the renewable energy that would need the investment. So let's take the European example here on the left-hand side, where you see that the total invest in billions is 12.7 in electrolyzers in order to ramp up to 40 gigawatt. But offshore wind is 44.7. So it's 3 times as much, or even 4 times as much, nearly. And onshore wind is another 20 and another 23. So it's really, really more in the field of renewable energy than in the field of hydrogen electrolyzer production. But that goes without saying. If we talk hydrogen renewables, this is exactly it. It's a combination. Here you see, and of course this presentation is accessible, so you can see the details later on. This is what we would need to invest into the infrastructure. It's 120 billion altogether if we would implement this plan. So 1/3 of this investment goes into infrastructure. And here you see how this then would translate into the different applications in the use of hydrogen. So in the steel production, in building up or creating synthetic kerosene, in the different mobility applications, heating, and finally in the balancing of the power production. I'm not going through all the figures now because I mentioned the figures in general already several times. And this is exactly the mission of the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance. It's to deliver in the Green Deal. It's also making use of this Next Generation EU. That's the big Corona recovery package that has been foreseen and that has been adopted by Commission and by the member states. You remember that there have been quite intensive talks of the member states. There still is some room for maneuver. European Parliament has some ideas on that, but in general, this is the line where to go. And here's where the Clean Hydrogen Alliance, as a club of CEOs, starts to build up exactly that plan and creates something like a pipeline of concrete projects that we need to deliver until the end of this year already. So especially for the 1 million ton of green hydrogen, we need to come up with this until the end of this year. But also we want to create a sphere of trust for a fast decision making. I mean, there is no hydrogen legislation so far. We have no hydrogen market design, which means that we need to have an eye-to-eye trust between policymakers, commissioners, ministers, and the CEOs in order to kickstart this hydrogen economy in absence of legislation. And that's the plan. So the deliverables, as I said, are large-scale investment projects, this pipeline of projects, and a roadmap addressing the main challenges and bottlenecks. Also, the keys of success are the leadership of the industry. That's why the role of Hydrogen Europe as a representation of this industry is quite crucial, and we understand that. There's the ambitious vision of this backbone, hydrogen backbone that we create until 2030, but also a strategic advice in this case-to-case approach in absence, as we said, in absence of legislation. And what we also need is a tailored financial and investment support in the end, the integration of the experience into the legislative making process that we all expect until 24, where we think we can have this hydrogen market design. Here you see a little bit how this alliance is structured. It's built up out of 6 roundtables, from hydrogen production, from then the transportation and distribution of hydrogen into the use in mobility, in residential applications, industrial applications, and in the energy sector. You see also that policymakers are part of it, not only CEOs, of course, but also the civil society, so NGOs, associations. And we are already preparing for this annual forum, which is once per year, where all the players then come together. And this will take place this year for the first time. However, we are still open for applications. So joining the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance and one of the 6 pillars is still possible if you use this website that we prepared. So it's the acronym that you see here. And we are in the midst of preparing the first pillar of roundtables. We have already some elements, some instruments that we can build on. So that's the IPSAI, the Important Project of Common European Interest, where we have been chosen by the European Commission as one value chain, strategic value chain, and we have already identified a lot of projects together with the member states here. And let me finish by giving 10 ideas how to make this process successful. So first is, of course, to define an EU-wide terminology for renewable and low-carbon hydrogen, because it's not only renewable in the end that will count, it's also low-carbon. Second, we want to establish the principle of CO2 content as the new currency of the energy system. Just a second. Yeah. Sorry. No. Yeah. Here. Then we need to promote and support hydrogen market stimulation programs. Commission is quite intensively thinking about quotas and targets and other support schemes. Also, we have to enable a competitive hydrogen economy by clarifying the hydrogen market design. I talked about this already. Next point is we need to revise the Trans-European Networks for Energy, the 10E regulation, to support the development and rollout of hydrogen networks. There is money in that process, and we need to concentrate in shifting this money into linking the pipeline system to the transportation system, the 10T, the Trans-European T corridor. And we also need to revise the Duffy. That's That's very concrete. We need to revise the alternative fuels infrastructure. Finally, we want to support still innovation and research in the next partnership. We have so far this year the fuel cell hydrogen joint undertaking, and there will be a continuation. We need to remove undue barriers. We also need to unlock hydrogen's potential by leveraging innovative financial instruments. So all these existing instruments have to be blended and have to work together. And finally, the launch of the Clean Hydrogen Alliance should establish a key element of European also climate and climate diplomacy and naval policy. Basically, we want a ton of hydrogen to be denominated in euro, so making the European Union the central marketplace. I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to you. And if there are questions, I'm happy to answer in the next minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we also know why you are doing this, because I think that's the next generation.
Exactly.
That is why it is so important. I can tell you why. That's a similar kind of personal motivation I have here as well. Yeah, I don't see any questions from the audience, and I think your presentation was really impressive. No? But I have a brief question, and of course we can still collect questions later, but I have just a brief question. You covered almost everything that came into my mind, but how do you see today the cost-wise competitiveness on today's energy market of hydrogen and in the future? Just if you can.
Yes. Well, today we have to overcome, I mean, we have to face the issue to come from gray hydrogen, which is quite cheap at the moment, but it's producing a lot of CO2 to the costful elements of hydrogen. We think that should the programs that we just start ramp up, we can achieve cost neutrality with gray hydrogen within the next 5 to 10 years. So 5 would be quite sportive, but 10 years is feasible. But it all depends, to be honest, on a fair treatment of CO2, of the CO2 content. If CO2 content becomes the new currency, and if we have a globally, but at least European-wide accepted version how to calculate this, so fossil becomes definitely more expensive, then of course this cost parity will be much earlier and much faster. And that is why I highlighted this. Currently, we can showcase with the carbon content in any kilo or ton of hydrogen how this could work. And we hope that there will be lessons to draw also for other sectors where then the carbon content would be counted in. And if that's counted in, that's much more efficient than the ETS. ETS exists, ETS is fine, but as we see, it's not that efficient in order to bring down fossil elements.
Okay, good. Thank you. There's one question, and I also then would request you for a brief answer from Felix von Geier. How much of the current energy consumption do you envisage hydrogen can replace in the European Union?
Well, in the long run, it's in 2050, it's a third to 40%. So that's the target. That's already quite a chunk of energy part of it. More realistically, in 2040, it's 25% that we think we can replace. That's quite something.
Okay, yes, that's indeed essential. Yeah, well, again, thank you very much from my side. It's been a great pleasure. Hear firsthand from the work that you're doing and what's going on in Europe.